On the morning of September 23, 1863, Confederate scouts riding through the hills of central Tennessee made a discovery that would baffle military historians for over 150 years. Fort Meridian, a massive Union stronghold that had controlled the Cumberland River crossing for 18 months, had completely vanished overnight. Not captured, not destroyed, not abandoned, simply gone. As if it had never existed at all. Civil War historian Dr. Amanda Cross first encountered this impossible story while researching Union supply lines for her book on Tennessee campaigns. In a dusty box of Confederate correspondence at the Tennessee State Archives, she found a frantic report from Colonel James Whitmore of the 15th Tennessee Cavalry to General Braxton Bragg, dated September 23, 1863. General, I must report the most extraordinary occurrence of this war. Fort Meridian, which yesterday housed 2,400 Union soldiers and commanded our river crossing, has disappeared entirely. The earthworks are gone. The wooden palisades are gone. Even the ground appears to have been restored to its natural state. My scouts found no trace of battle, no signs of withdrawal, no indication that any military installation ever existed at this location. Amanda initially assumed this was either a clerical error or perhaps Confederate propaganda designed to confuse Union intelligence. But as she dug deeper into military records from both sides, she discovered that Fort Meridian's disappearance was documented by multiple independent sources, all telling the same impossible story. Union records from the Army of the Cumberland showed that Fort Meridian had been established in March 1862 under the command of Colonel Theodore Harrison. The fort was strategically positioned on a bluff overlooking the Cumberland River, designed to prevent Confederate forces from using the crossing to move troops and supplies between Tennessee and Kentucky. Engineering reports described an impressive fortification earthwork, walls 12 feet high, wooden palisades extending another 8 feet, artillery positions for 20 cannons, barracks for 2,500 soldiers, supply warehouses, a field hospital, and a telegraph station connecting the fort to Union headquarters in Nashville. Construction had required moving over 50,000 cubic yards of earth and had taken 6 months to complete. The fort had been actively operational for over a year, playing a crucial role in several major battles. Union correspondence shows regular reports from Colonel Harrison throughout 1862 and 1863, detailing troop movements, supply deliveries, and skirmishes with Confederate forces. Supply requisitions show massive quantities of food, ammunition, and equipment being delivered to Fort Meridian on a weekly basis. What made the disappearance even more mysterious was that Union communications with Fort Meridian had continued normally until September 22nd, 1863. The last telegram from Colonel Harrison, sent at 8:47 p.m. that evening, was a routine status report, noting that all was quiet and requesting additional winter clothing for his troops. Amanda's breakthrough came when she discovered the personal diary of Major William Foster, a Union quartermaster who had been scheduled to inspect Fort Meridian on September 23rd. Foster's diary entry for that date was deeply disturbing. Arrived at the coordinates for Fort Meridian this morning, expecting to conduct routine supply inspection. Found nothing but rolling hills and forest, exactly as this area appeared before any fort was constructed. No earthworks, no buildings, no trace of 2,400 soldiers who should have been present. Most unsettling of all, the terrain shows no evidence that any construction ever occurred. The ground appears naturally settled, with mature trees growing where barracks stood just yesterday. Foster's diary revealed that he immediately rode to nearby Carthage to report the situation, but found that local civilians claimed they had never seen any Union fort in the area. When Foster insisted that Fort Meridian had existed for over a year, residents looked at him as if he were suffering from battle fatigue or mental breakdown. Amanda's investigation led her to examine geological surveys and topographical maps from the 1860s. She found detailed military engineering drawings of Fort Meridian's construction, showing the dramatic changes made to the natural landscape. Comparing these to current satellite imagery and terrain maps, she confirmed that the area now appears exactly as it would have before any military construction occurred. The mystery deepened when Amanda discovered that Fort Meridian wasn't the only Union installation to disappear during the Civil War. Her research revealed at least 6 similar incidents between 1862 and 1864, all involving strategically important Union forts that simply vanished overnight, leaving no trace of their existence. The pattern was always the same routine: communications until evening, complete disappearance by morning, terrain restored to natural conditions, and local populations with no memory of any military presence. In each case, the disappearances occurred during periods of intense Confederate pressure, when the loss of these strategic positions would have been devastating to Union war efforts. Amanda's most significant discovery came through genealogical research into the families of soldiers who had been stationed at these disappeared forts. She found death certificates, pension records, and family correspondence confirming that thousands of Union soldiers had simply vanished along with their installations. Official records listed them as missing in action or deserted. But family letters revealed a more disturbing truth. Mary Harrison, wife of Fort Meridian's Commander Colonel Theodore Harrison, had written to the War Department in October 1863 demanding information about her husband's whereabouts. The response, which Amanda found in National Archives files, was chilling in its bureaucratic indifference. The War Department has no record of any Colonel Theodore Harrison or any installation called Fort Meridian. Your husband's service record shows no assignment to any such facility. Similar responses were sent to hundreds of families whose loved ones had been stationed at the disappeared forts. The government's position was consistent. These installations had never existed. The soldiers had never been assigned to them, and any claims to the contrary were the result of wartime confusion or grief-induced delusions. Amanda's investigation took an unexpected turn when she made contact with Dr. Edwin Marsh, a retired physicist who had spent decades researching what he called temporal anomalies during the Civil War period. Dr. Marsh had been quietly collecting accounts of impossible disappearances, unexplained phenomena, and reality distortions reported by soldiers and civilians during the 1860s. Fort Meridian wasn't the only impossibility. Dr. Marsh explained during their meeting at his Virginia home, "I've documented over 40 incidents of people, places, and events that seem to have been erased from reality during the Civil War. Entire battles that participants remembered but which left no physical evidence. Regiments that fought bravely but disappeared from all official records. Towns that housed thousands of refugees but which no maps show ever existing." Dr. Marsh's theory was extraordinary. He believed that the intense psychic trauma and massive death toll of the Civil War had created what he called reality fractures, moments when the normal flow of time and space became unstable. In these fractured zones, events could be literally erased from history, leaving only scattered memories and fragmentary records as evidence they had ever occurred. "Think about it," Dr. Marsh continued. "The Civil War killed over 600,000 Americans, more than all other American wars combined. That level of death and suffering, concentrated in specific geographic areas, could theoretically destabilize the fabric of reality itself. The disappeared forts weren't captured or destroyed. They were erased from the timeline entirely." While Dr. Marsh's theory seemed fantastical, Amanda couldn't ignore the evidence she had compiled. Multiple independent sources confirming the existence of Fort Meridian, detailed engineering records of its construction, personal accounts from soldiers and officers who had served there, and then complete erasure from physical reality within a single night. Amanda's attempts to publish her research were met with resistance from academic institutions and government agencies. The National Park Service, which manages Civil War battlefield sites, refuse to comment on her findings. Military historians dismissed her evidence as wartime propaganda and clerical errors. Despite the extensive documentation she had assembled, the most disturbing aspect of Amanda's investigation was discovering that the erasure of these forts had been deliberately concealed by both Union and Confederate authorities. Leaders on both sides seemed to understand that something impossible was happening, but chose to classify these incidents rather than attempt to explain them. Secret correspondence between Union generals shows they were aware that strategic positions were experiencing anomalous disappearances, but ordered their subordinates to avoid discussing these incidents in official reports. Confederate intelligence documents reveal similar awareness and confusion about Union installations that ceased to exist without military action. Amanda found evidence that both governments established secret committees to investigate these reality distortions. But all records of their findings were classified and hidden in archives that remain sealed to this day. The official position of both sides was that these incidents never occurred, despite having dedicated resources to studying them. Modern attempts to investigate the Fort Meridian site have been complicated by the fact that the land is now privately owned by a defense contractor with government connections. Amanda's requests to conduct archaeological surveys have been denied, and she has been warned that unauthorized investigation of the property could result in federal charges. Ground-penetrating radar scans conducted from adjacent public land show no evidence of the massive earthworks that engineering drawings indicate should still be detectable underground. The soil composition appears naturally stratified, with no signs of the extensive excavation and construction that created Fort Meridian's fortifications. Local residents living near the former fort site report unusual phenomena: sudden temperature drops, sounds of marching soldiers on quiet nights, and glimpses of uniformed figures that vanish when approached directly. Several property owners have found Civil War artifacts on their land, including buttons, buckles, and bullets that appear to be materializing from nowhere. The fate of the 2,400 Union soldiers who disappeared with Fort Meridian remains one of the Civil War's greatest unsolved mysteries. They left behind families, friends, and communities, but according to official records, they never existed at all. Their service, their sacrifice, and their very lives were erased along with the fort they defended. Today, the site where Fort Meridian once stood is a peaceful valley with no indication that it ever hosted one of the war's most important strategic positions. But on certain misty mornings, local photographers have captured strange images, shadows that suggest earthwork walls, shapes that might be wooden palisades, and figures that could be soldiers still standing guard over a fort that disappeared from reality over 150 years ago. If this incredible story of the Civil War's impossible disappearance amazes you, please like this video to help preserve these forgotten military mysteries. Subscribe for more investigations into the unexplained phenomena and government cover-ups that official historians refuse to acknowledge. Comment and tell me, do you believe Dr. Marsh's theory about reality fractures caused by massive trauma? Or do you think there's a more conventional explanation for these disappearances? Have you encountered any historical sites or stories that don't match official records? Let me know which Civil War mystery you'd like me to investigate next. The Phantom Regiment that fought at Gettysburg, the vanished battlefield hospital that treated thousands, the missing Confederate gold train, or the soldiers who aged decades overnight. Subscribe, hit notifications, and share with anyone fascinated by the impossible events hidden within America's bloodiest conflict. See you next time as we explore more of the inexplicable phenomena and reality distortions that the Civil War left buried in our nation's history. Remember, some disappearances are so complete that even memory struggles to preserve them.